Tonight on KQED Newsroom, new coronavirus relief funding is close to a deal in D.C., and we're learning more about the major cyber attack on U.S. institutions. Congressmember Adam Schiff joins us with the latest. And Mayor London Breed talks with us about San Francisco's bleak economic outlook and the hope that's arrived with the vaccine. Also, food insecurity across California is spiking during the pandemic. We visit a food bank to see how they're helping. Plus, Golden Gate Park comes alive at sundown in this week's look at something beautiful. Welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Priya David Clemens. It's been a week of growing anguish and growing hope. America marked more than 300,000 reported COVID-19 related deaths. But we also welcomed the arrival of the first round of the coronavirus vaccine to hundreds of locations throughout the nation. And direct relief payments could soon be on their way, as we appear to be close to a new economic stimulus package. This week, we also learned about the biggest cyber espionage attack in the United States in years, believed to be the work of Russian government hackers. The hackers targeted dozens of public agencies, including the U.S. Treasury and the agency that maintains our nuclear weapons stockpile. Joining us now by Skype from Washington, D.C. is Democratic California Congressmember Adam Schiff, who chairs the House Intelligence Committee. Congressmember, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So the stimulus package appears to have hit one obstacle after another. What's going on in Washington? It just feels like our country's leadership is completely out of touch with the very real economic struggles people are going through.
Well, certainly some of the leadership is. I don't think the leadership on the Democratic side of the aisle has lost touch, because we recognize just how serious this crisis is and how many families are suffering, how many businesses are at risk of going under. But the problem has been Mitch McConnell and the Republican conference in the Senate. They don't want to do anymore. A majority of their members have said we've done too much already to help the American people. Now, I think that is oblivious to the pain going on. Nevertheless, we have I think, come very close to a compromise that is a lot smaller, frankly, than I think the country is going to need, and we're going to have to come back to this in January. But we expect either this evening or over the weekend to vote on a relief package that will provide more funds for small businesses through the PPP program, that will extend unemployment compensation, that will extend the eviction moratorium for renters, that will provide more money for testing and for the vaccination program, but may leave states and cities out, which is a really big problem.
We're going to get to that in a minute, but you speak of the Republican Party being the obstacle here, but Speaker Pelosi has also been unwilling to compromise.
No, she's been willing to compromise. Look, we started out with a bill that we passed 6 months ago that would provide about $3 trillion in additional aid to the country, because that's what's needed. And during the process of the last 6 months, Mr. McConnell refused to take it up and let his own people vote on it. We introduced another bill that was down to $2.2 trillion. Now we're down to a $900 billion measure that is really inadequate to the task. But getting something done is better than getting nothing done. Still, the question is, what's the need out there? And I think Speaker Pelosi recognizes the need is tremendous. And so, I don't think you can simply say, well, a pox of both houses, when one party has continually come to the table over the last 6 months to get it down and has had to negotiate against itself in many respects.
Do you expect the new stimulus deal to be finalized this weekend and to get through both houses?
I do. For the first time in those 6 months, Mitch McConnell is saying he now wants to get a bill done. That wasn't true before the election because, as I mentioned, it divided his conference, and he didn't want a bill to pass in the Senate with a minority of Republicans and a majority of Democrats. Now that that election is over, he's really singing a different tune, and I think that's a positive development.
You just mentioned this. In order to get this relief package through, Democrats may have to agree to leave state funding out, and that's sorely needed here. What is the impact to California?
Well, it would be, I think, disastrous if we can't get state funding and local government funding, including this package, because it will result in tens of thousands of layoffs, I think, in California. And those layoffs may be teachers and firefighters. They may be, frankly, the healthcare workers we need to participate in the vaccination program. I think it would be completely irresponsible for Republicans to say, hey, if you want any relief at all, you're going to have to let this go. But that's where they've been. And I just think that will be catastrophic for cities and states around the country.
Would you vote to move this package forward if there isn't stimulus funding that goes directly to the states?
Well, I have every confidence in Speaker Pelosi's ability to negotiate, so I don't want to diminish from her leverage in any way. But I'm certainly hoping that we have a package that includes new help for small businesses and in the unemployed, but also doesn't leave states out in the cold and result in adding to the unemployment rolls when we see massive layoffs.
Let's turn to another topic. We've learned this week about the cyber attacks on America that happened back in March and were ongoing for several months. It appears to be the work of Russian government agents. As the chair of the Intelligence Committee, could you outline the breadth and the depth of these attacks as we know them right now?
This is certainly one of the most serious cyber attacks in our history. It cross-cuts industries, the government agencies. We don't know at this point the length and breadth of it, except that it's huge and represents a massive intelligence and defense and cybersecurity failure on the part of the federal government. We know that there were multiple vulnerabilities that were exploited, that the bad actor in this case is a very sophisticated actor that was very patient, used good tradecraft, is still inhabiting some of our systems and some of our corporations. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take a long time to do the mitigation necessary. And it underscores both the need to establish a stronger deterrent against these kind of foreign attacks, but also to really up our game when it comes to our cyber defense.
Congressmember, do you see the nature of war changing as technologies evolve? Should America be responding as if these were acts of war?
The nature of war certainly is changing in many respects. We could see that in the use of little green men in the Ukraine, for example, in Ukraine. But it's also changing in the cyber realm. Whether we should treat this like a different kind of act of war all depends, I guess, on what consequences flow from calling this an act of war. I don't think that it means that we're going to send in the troops somewhere, but it does mean that we may need to use a cyber response to this cyber attack or other responses. We're certainly going to want to sanction the responsible party. We're going to want to raise the cost because right now, the responsible bad actor doesn't feel there's anything to deter this kind of attack. And that leaves us open to more of these very destructive acts.
The leader of our country, President Trump, at the time we're speaking, has not made any comments about the cyber attacks. What do you make of that? Do you think he's checked out because he's about to be out of office? Do you think he's focused on trying to convince Americans that he actually won the vote? Or is there something else about his relationship with Russia that keeps him from speaking out?
I think it's a couple things. I think it in part represents the fact that he has checked out. And if the public reporting is correct, for example, he hasn't received a single intelligence briefing since the election. That represents a dangerous dereliction of duty. If the bad actor is Russia, as is being publicly reported, and I can't comment on the accuracy of that attribution, but if it is Russia, of course, that provides another explanation because this president has consistently been unwilling to stand up to Vladimir Putin, unwilling to criticize Putin and what Russia is doing. And that has left us vulnerable because one of the things that we need is a deterrent to cyber bad acts. And we know that the Russians are among the worst and most capable malign cyber actors in the world.
It may be left then to President-elect Joe Biden to address these cyber attacks. What can he do?
Well, he can bring about sanctions against the bad actor. He can work with our international allies to establish a global deterrent to this kind of malevolent activity. It's not just theft, as serious as it is, of national security information, but it's also deeply destructive of the global economy. Because, of course, lots of private companies are impacted by this. Their private data, private citizens are impacted by this. There needs to be a global response to deter and punish the actors that are responsible.
President-elect Biden has chosen several Californians to work with his administration. You've been a very strong Democratic leader over the past several years. Are you disappointed you haven't been tapped to join his cabinet?
Look, I feel very fortunate to have the work that I do and the responsibility that I do. I'm more than willing to serve in any way I can be useful in Congress, in administration, back home in California. My goal is just, frankly, at this point, to help us get through this pandemic, to get us back on our economic feet. So I'm more than content with the work that I'm doing, and and we'll leave it to others to decide if there are other things they want to tap me for.
All right, let's talk about the Georgia Senate races. They're of critical importance to the Democrats in their fight to win control of the Senate. Have you been supportive of the campaigns of Raphael Warnock or John Ossoff in any way?
I've been very supportive. Was before the runoffs, have been since, hosting events for them. I've gotten to know them very well over Zoom, but marshaling so many of my supporters around the country to help their campaigns. It's really critical to moving progressive legislation through the Congress and getting it to Joe Biden. It's crucial to his success and all of the relief efforts that we're talking about, because whatever package we agree on in the next few days is not going to be enough. We're going to have to come back in the new year and do more. And whether we have a Democratic Senate will determine whether we'll be successful.
And last, Congressmember, how will you be spending the holidays? How many family members will you be gathering with? Will you be gathering inside or outside? And when will you be spending time with them?
My expectation is we will be spending it, just my wife, my son, and I. My 92-year-old father, I will not get to see. My daughter in New York, I probably won't get to see. I think all of us need to do what keeps our families safe and our neighbor and our community safe. And the safest thing to do this holiday season is to stay home.
Congressmember Adam Schiff from Burbank, thank you so much for your time and good luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Last week, more than 200,000 Californians filed for unemployment aid as the economy remains hobbled by the pandemic. The San Francisco Marin Food Bank says they've been serving nearly double the number of people they normally see this time of year. Producer Monica Lamb stopped by one of their locations for a visit.
Here in the middle of the playground at James Denman Middle School in San Francisco, potatoes, broccoli, bananas, and oranges are being packed into grocery bags. This is one of nearly 30 pop-up pantries created by the San Francisco Marin Food Bank to help those in need during the coronavirus pandemic.
Right now, we are serving double the number of households that we were serving pre-pandemic. And today we are planning to serve nearly 900 households in just a couple of hours. Product gets offloaded, it's already all
Katie McKnight is the Director of Community Engagement. She says they're serving 55,000 people every week throughout San Francisco and Marin County.
So one of the things we've really noticed is many of those that are visiting our pop-ups now, this is their first time ever needing food assistance. So when we see that increase in households served, many of them come from industries that were severely impacted by COVID, like the service industry, like the hospitality industry.
McKnight showed me how to pack one of the grocery bags.
Do you have any tips on how to pack the bag well?
I pack it just like I do when I pack my own bags at the grocery store. So we try to go heavy to light. Someone's gonna get a big sweet potato, celery, and then 5 potatoes.
Oh wow, 2 onions.
Good morning, how are you?
Jose Aldo Ramirez says he started coming to this food bank a month ago after he lost his job as a janitor.
Yo trabajo para ABM, es una compañía de janitorial. Casi no hay trabajo, hay muy poco trabajo debido a que esta compañía pues hace contratos. La mayoría de los contratos están en el downtown y los buildings pues están cerrados.
Across California and nationwide, at least 1 in 10 adults said they did not have enough food to eat during the past few weeks, according to U.S. Census data. With double the number of people coming to pick up groceries, food banks like this one need double the number of volunteers.
I think I get more out of it than I give, honestly. I get that hard workout. I don't have to go to the gym. It's the most social interaction with people that I get. I'm making friends with the other volunteers. Go, Paco! And, we're helping out. So we're helping people who need food, and there's a lot of people these days who need help.
The San Francisco Marin Food Bank plans to keep up this high level of service for months to come.
Right now, we need about 2,500 volunteers per week. You can also make a financial donation to the food bank. For every $1 raised, the food bank is able to distribute $5 worth of food.
For KQED, I'm Monica Lamb.
The economic upheaval is painful on the individual and family level, and it's also being felt in towns and cities across the country. This week, the city of San Francisco put a new number to its economic struggles. The city faces a $653 million deficit over the next 2 fiscal years. In response, Mayor London Breed directed all city departments to identify nearly 10% in fresh budget cuts to address the shortfall. Joining us now by Skype in San Francisco is San Francisco Mayor London Breed. Madam Mayor, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Priya. It's great to be here.
So what sort of services should we expect to see impacted by these new budget cuts in San Francisco?
Well, we don't know specifically what it will be, but we know what we need to try to do everything to preserve, specifically our public health department and the work they're doing around COVID. We know Muni has a significant budget deficit, and we need to try and address that so that we're not cutting services. But the fact is, we are going to be experiencing some significant cuts, and it's going to require a lot of sacrifice. And so we've asked all departments to come back with cuts that help us to balance what we anticipate to be a $653 million budget deficit. So it's going to be really hard for us.
Yeah. We're also just learning that the San Francisco School District and the unions can't agree on terms to reopen the schools, which means San Francisco schools won't reopen in January, even though the San Francisco Department of Health says it can be done safely. You've argued that schools should reopen. What's your take on this latest development?
Well, I think it is so tragic and so unfortunate when we talk about the achievement gap and what's happened to our kids in public schools. It's really tragic. I mean, initially the teachers union had one set of guidelines that they wanted us to follow, and we have worked with the school district to try to provide all the resources to increase testing and to do everything we can to reassure educators that we're going to keep them safe, we're going to keep the students safe, and they can come back. And now the rules are being changed in the middle of the game. And that's the frustrating part, because now there are additional requirements that they're adding, even though we were at a better place.
What are some of those requirements? What are the sticking points?
So some of the requirements that they've asked for is based on the number of tests, the students being tested, the teachers being tested, and how many times and when they should be tested, making sure that the classroom environment is clean. And to be clear, San Francisco has one of the most conservative public health departments who are imposing the guidelines for the school district, and we are sticking to those guidelines. And so to add some additional requirements that are unnecessary and not recommended by the Department of Public Health makes it even more difficult and more frustrating. So we know that we are in the midst of a surge. We know that things are challenging, but that shouldn't stop us from moving forward with a plan. So as soon as day one hits and the public health gives us the ability to open, we should.
All right, Mayor Breed, I want to turn to another topic. You've been criticized for going to dinner at the expensive French Laundry restaurant in Napa in the midst of this economic hardship. The restaurant itself has been criticized for taking $2.4 million in Paycheck Protection Program funds. In hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
Well, to be clear, San Francisco was in the yellow, Napa was in the orange. Indoor and outdoor dining was allowed. I didn't violate any health orders, and I do understand that regardless of that, people are struggling, people are frustrated, and they expect, someone in my position to be held to a higher standard and to set an example and to follow, of course, the spirit of a lot of these regulations and not just the intent. So I think what's important is to make sure that this doesn't continue to distract from what we are dealing with right now, which is the worst surge we've ever experienced, not just in San Francisco, but around the entire state. It's unfortunate that this has become a distraction in that way, but at the end of the day, I know that I'm a leader. I know I'm being held to a higher standard, and my goal is to make sure that I get us through this very difficult time, and I want people to trust and support the fact that we are using data, science, and really whatever we can to make really the decisions we're making, because we realize they're hard decisions to make and they're impacting people's lives. And I want us to be able to make sure that the public trusts what it is that we're doing to keep everyone safe.
You've also been criticized for enacting strict lockdown measures even before they were mandatory. And last weekend, some people protested at your home, leading you to post the following social media message. You think these decisions are easy. You think the decisions of people's livelihoods or lives is something I take lightly. What's it like for you to be mayor right now?
Well, it's hard because, when you hear shut down a city as a mayor, all you can think about is, wait a minute, what does that mean for someone who's not collecting a paycheck? What does that mean for someone who can't pay their bills or their rent? How are they going to survive this? And it's 9 months. We're in the midst of this pandemic, and it's still, of course, challenging. Those problems don't just go away because time has gone by. So it's hard. It's hard when you have to make a decision that's going to impact somebody's livelihood. And ultimately, what we have really tried to do in making these decisions is, do we absolutely have to make this because it involves someone's life? We've had to focus on using the data and the science to protect life. And sadly, that means the economy and the impacts on the economy have been, right behind that. And so, yes, these are hard decisions. It's frustrating, and it's frustrating that people think that you want to do this to them. Ultimately, I have to do what it is my responsibility to do as a leader, and that is make the hard decisions and hope that as we get through this pandemic, things will get better for all of us.
You also wrote the following in the same personal post, quote, "To show up with Roman candles that look like tiki torches or pitchforks is a whole other kind of racism." What sort of racism did you experience that day?
Look, people have a right to protest, and I don't think there's anything wrong with anyone deciding that they want to protest because of an issue that they have. But, sadly, some of the things that have been done specifically to me as a Black woman, I just have not seen this done to other people that they protest. I mean, the fact that you're walking around with a pitchfork in your hand and walking around and stomping around and making threats and saying other things, I just feel like that's a different kind of, that's not something that should ever be okay. And this has happened with the Roman candles at night, in the middle of the night, and, aiming these and shooting these towards my window. And like some of the things that are happening, it's like, wait a minute, protest, people are upset, but let's remember this country's history of racism. And regardless of who you are, you should know that it's never okay to show up to a Black woman's house using any of these kinds of props.
Let's turn to a different topic now. San Francisco has also been dealing with a corruption scandal, beginning with the arrest of the city's public works director, Mohamed Nuru, in January, and including, most recently, charges filed against Harlan Kelly, the city's director of public utilities. Does the city have a problem with systemic corruption? And as a mayor, what are you doing to regain public trust?
Well, first of all, people are innocent until proven guilty. And I know that the charges are very disturbing, and it's playing itself out in this investigation process, as well as a number of things that have to occur as a result of this. And I do think that, sadly, it does shake the public's trust. And so what I have the responsibility to do, as I did earlier this year when the first charges came down, is direct not only our various city departments, but to ask the city attorney's office, which is an independent elected official, to investigate all of these departments to figure out what is wrong and how is something like this able to occur, and how do we put the safeguards in place to fix it, to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen. And also sending a strong message to all city department heads, all the people who are responsible for running these departments and managing people, that we have to do better.
So much has been hard this year, but this week did bring some hope. On Tuesday, you witnessed the very first coronavirus vaccines being given to people in San Francisco. Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, when I went to San Francisco General to see for myself the people, the frontline healthcare workers, the ICU doctors, and others who have been treating patients for months, it just felt so good. They were happy. I was happy. It was very emotional, too, because what they also realized, and what I realized, is this gives us hope. This gives us hope as a city. That this vaccine means there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm so excited about what's to come.
Mayor Breed, what are your personal plans for the holidays? Will you be seeing family and friends at all?
Well, I am not comfortable with seeing almost anybody right now. Here's the thing, I don't just keep to myself and limit the number of people I'm exposed to because I'm mayor. I do it because I don't want to get COVID. And so the more people that you see, those people are seeing other people. And so you put yourself in a position where you could possibly get it. And so I'm not going to be able to see family and friends this holiday season, but that's a good thing because I'll be able to see them next year. And I think the sacrifice this year will make sure that we don't risk infecting one another so that someone loses their life over this virus and isn't able to celebrate the holidays next year.
London Breed, the mayor of San Francisco, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This week's Something Beautiful is an enchanted forest that lights up as the sun sets. Located in Golden Gate Park's Peacock Meadow, this new art installation named Entwined boasts more than an acre of otherworldly shapes and ever-changing lights. The illuminated meadow is open to the public and free to visit now until January 4th. I hope you've been enjoying this new segment. We created it as a way to notice the good we see around us, especially in these difficult times. If you'd like to share your thoughts about Something Beautiful or anything else on this show, you can reach me on Twitter at Priya D. Clemens. And you can find more of our news coverage at kqed.org/kqed-newsroom. From all of us here at KQED Newsroom, thank you for joining us this evening. This is our final show of 2020. We wish you all a safe and pleasant holiday season, and we'll see you right back here on January 8th, 2021. Good night.